Hey guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I'm your host, Devon Harris, and you know what we do here. You know, our goal is to provide you with insights and ideas that are going to help you to live your absolute best life. And so, if that's something that you're interested in, you know, welcome back. If it's your first time, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. We have an amazing guest here today that is going to help us to do just that, share insights that are going to help you live your best life. My guest today is a guy who has had many lives. You know, he was a school teacher in the UK. He was a diver in the North Atlantic, you know, a rig diver. He was a nightclub bouncer in Gibraltar, right? A program director with the Canadian Outbound School, a professor at a college in Phoenix. You know, today he's a mountain climber, an author, a motivational speaker. The man has lived, you know, about 10 lives already. And he has, you know, been given so many awards as well. The Franklin Delano, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Award, the ESPN Superlative Performance Award. I would like to get one of those. The one that I'm really impressed with, though, is the, ready for it? The Most Magnificent Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, right? And that's just there's a few of the awards and honors he has been afforded, you know. But one of the things that impressed me most about his accomplishment is that he's the first disabled person ever to climb Mount Everest. Now, I'm having a hard time climbing up my stairs with 2 legs. This dude has climbed Mount Everest with only 1 leg. So it is my honor and my pleasure to welcome on the show today, Tom Whittaker. Tom, welcome. It's so good to have you.
And good to see your smiling face, Devon. Last time I saw that face, that grin, we were in Kyrgyzstan working for the U.S. State Department.
I don't know if I was grinning. The thing I remember, and it's a story I tell all the time, was, you know, it had been many years since I'd gone skiing, right? And I admit that I'm king of the bunny slopes. And that first day out, I went on the bunny slopes and I felt good, felt confident, and I needed something a little bit more challenging. And you were heading up on the ski lift, and I decided to join you. I took some bad advice from Nelson Carmichael, who I hope to have on the show one of these days, Mr. Moguls, right? And he goes, yeah, that slope isn't too bad, steep in some bits. I'm like, Tom, I'm coming up. And he's going, yeah, I'll wait for you at the top. You remember what happened? I could not even get off the ski lift, man. I was falling down. I'm trying to ski down the hill. I'm all over the place. I had to take the skis off and walk down. And I feel so bad, Tom, because I ruined your day of skiing, because you were kind enough to stay with me. We were on the slope so long, they closed the lift.
Yeah, it was getting dark. I was beginning to worry.
Yeah, but, you know, now I can smile again. So I don't think the last time you saw me, I was smiling, but I appreciated you, you know, waiting for me then. I appreciate you being on the show. So welcome.
Very cool.
You're still talking to me. Hey, so I know your dad was a colonel in the British Army.
Yes, correct. The Royal Welsh Fusiliers.
You know, so did that mean that you moved around a bit? What was that like?
Oh yeah, as a kid, I started out traipsing around. I actually spent 3 years in Jamaica, and I was there for the, I think it was Caroline was the name of the hurricane, but that was the first hurricane I went to.
Experience.
And then you saw all these palm trees with their tops all broken off, and there are all these little soggy bundles. And when you get closer and look at them, you realize they're birds. And if we think hurricanes are a bad time, the birds have no defense.
Yeah.
So anyway, that broke my heart. And I was only 5 years old at the time. And then, it was pretty cool. The Queen came and there was a huge celebration. And so that must have been like 1962.
Was that 62 during the Queen came? So, was that 62 when we had independence or before?
No, it was before then. It was in the 50s. She came to the throne, I think, in 1952 or 53, something like that. And
that was during her tour.
Right around that time.
Yeah. Cool. So Jamaica, and you're left brokenhearted because of the birds and the hurricane, and those can be rough. But so where else have you lived?
Oh, I spent a lot of time as in a boarding school in the UK, where it was the good old days of corporal punishment. Spare the rod and spoil the child.
A lot of good that did you, huh?
The least spoiled child you've ever met. There was no dust in my trousers whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then I'd spend my vacations with relatives, and usually with my uncle Roger, who was a farmer, and his kids. And I was a good athlete. I thought I was a pretty tough guy. But when you get into wrestling matches with guys that have grown up on a farm and used to chucking 130-pound bales around and stuff, it puts you in your place pretty darn quickly.
I got you. So you're pretty hardy. So obviously you tried wrestling. Are there any other organized sports that you tried when you were younger?
Well, yes, I was a team sport guy. Rugby was something I was really good at, and I got, as a schoolboy, selected to play for, selected to try out for the Welsh team. And Wales lives, breathes, and sleeps rugby. So that was a big thing. And then when I went to college, I represented the college in athletics for javelin and discus. I played rugby and represented London University for rugby and so on. And so I was playing at a pretty high standard. And then when I came to the United States, I set up a rugby team at Idaho State University, where I was doing a master's degree. And we got second place in the regional championships the first year we were up and running. So that was kind of cool.
Congrats. That's awesome. So as I said earlier, you have had many lives. Was there anything in your early years, in your upbringing, that influenced those career choices, those early career choices?
Well, I think in a strange sort of way, when you mentioned that I was working as a rig diver out in the North Sea, and when we had time off, we would work for a month at a time and have 2 weeks off. Most people just have the weekends off. So what are you going to do? You spend a great weekend with them, and then you can't stick around. You've got really nowhere else to go. So I had a friend who was working in an outdoor pursuit center in the UK that teaches adventure recreation as a process of developing character and personal development. And so I would go and work as a volunteer instructor. And as a good athlete, I was really surprised to find that rock climbing terrified me, and I was really, really bad at it. And I'd be climbing with some gals that didn't look particularly athletic or anything like that, carrying a little weight and stuff. And they'd skinny right up this thing, and I'd be struggling. And I realized that it wasn't my physical capability. It was all here in the head. And so I came to the conclusion that I either had to never do this again, or I had to buy the equipment, make a commitment, and get good at it. And so because it bugged me, because I didn't like not being good at something, I had no natural ability for it, and I ended up coming to the United States, delivering a 65-foot sailing boat across the Atlantic, and then hitchhiking to Yosemite Valley. And the whole idea was in Britain, I could climb 300-foot cliffs. In the United States, in the Yosemite Valley, you can climb 3,000-foot cliffs. You know, so
is that how you got into mountain climbing then, Tom? So you're volunteering with your friend. These girls are running circles around you on rock faces, and you, I guess, being competitive and not liking the fact that you're not very good at this, started out, and you moved to the U.S. and really got into rock climbing and mountaineering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have a photograph here. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but you know, can you see it or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you see, when you can do that, you've conquered your fear of heights, haven't you?
Yes. That's where was this? Where was
it? Yeah, that was in Britain, in Wales, on a mountain called Tryfan.
Mm-hmm. So you get into mountaineering and rock climbing. What are some of the early challenging rock faces and mountains that you climbed and hiked?
Well, I think that the most important rock climb in my life happened after I was hit by a drunk driver. I was on my way on Thanksgiving night, driving from Pocatello, Idaho, where I just got a master's degree in outdoor adventure education. And I was driving to Sun Valley to get a job, working for Sun Valley Corporation. Drunk driver came into my lane, hit me head on. I was driving a VW bus, no engine in front, nothing like that. And I sustained multiple crush injuries to both legs. Both knees were permanently damaged, and my right kneecap was removed. And my right foot was amputated. And for the next 5 days, I went through a number of life crises. They gave me 8 bags of blood transfusions, and they saved my life. And I would be in my hospital bed, and friends of mine who were climbing companions would came as far away as from Canada and from Maine to come see me and visit. And they were so angry that I was just this broken bag of bones.
Right.
And we had been climbing some really extreme stuff together. And you know from being in the military yourself how you do become a band of brothers. And adversity gets people to come together. When these people have, hurricanes and stuff like that, everybody works together to help one another, and it's an amazing thing. Well, our friendships are welded in that kind of crucible, and these guys came and they were so mad. And so what I did was I got a regular, I got one right here because I kept the habit, composition book, and I just write my thoughts, my ideas, everything in there. And I do one for about a year, and I just write all my stuff in there, and then I have them for 20 years. I can go back and look, and they're kind of interesting. But anyway,
exactly.
And then I would tell them that I was going to do this climb called Outer Limits. And if you're going to be an extreme mountaineer and rock climber, this is one of the climbs you have to have had, you have to have achieved on.
Resume, yeah.
And, when it was put up, it was considered the hardest climb in the world. And so I was telling them that I was going to go back and climb this climb. And they're going, this Whittaker's not only
broken in body, but in mind
as well. And so I spent the next 2 years training really, really hard. And then I found myself standing at the base of this cliff with this scimitar slash crack running down the middle of it. And
so when you say you spent 2 years training really, really hard, are you talking about after the accident?
Yes, this is after the accident, after and lots of things happened. I became homeless because the gal that hit me was underinsured, and so I lost my foot, I lost my life savings, I lost my job, and I was, because I couldn't pay my hospital bills, I was, out on the street as soon as they could get me out the door. And I didn't have anywhere to stay. And you can stay with friends for a little while, but then you have to kind of, jump out and do something on your own. Yeah. And my legs were all smashed up. I couldn't work. I was a foreign student, so I didn't have a permit to work. Yeah. I'd already graduated. And so I was living in an abandoned basement of an old kind of house in Pocatello, and eating out of dumpsters for a while. Wow. so I lost a lot of weight, which was good.
so hey, before we get to the climb, right? So talk to me. Here it is that you're going about your life. Things are great. You're finishing up your master's. You get hit, and that obviously changed your life. So you're in hospital, you wake up, and you are all crushed. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
Well, the thing that I tried to do was not to worry about things that I couldn't change, I couldn't affect. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I realized was that I was in really bad shape, and all I needed to do was concentrate on getting well. And a step that I'd made before that was that while I was still trapped in the vehicle, and before they managed to cut me out and get me back to hospital, they wanted to give me an IV with pain medication and stuff like that. And I knew from working in mountain rescue that when I got to hospital, I'd be prepped and x-rayed, and then the surgeon would use protocols that are laid down to do whatever needed to be done. And I wanted to talk to the surgeon and tell him why I was in America and what I was wanting to do for a living, working as a mountain guide and professional mountaineer, and the feet are part of the job description. And so I got a chance to talk to my surgeon, and he actually admired the fact that I hadn't taken any pain medications, so that I would be clear-minded, clear-headed. I could talk to him. And so he agreed to get some more people into a team situation and decide what they were going to do with me. So he got an internist called Dr. Radcliffe, a traveling fellow who goes around teaching the latest techniques in surgery. And he just happened to be in Pocatello at the time. And so Dr. Goodman came in, and Dr. Bacon, my surgeon that I talked to, and they talked it backwards and forwards. And they're going, okay, well, if we don't take him his right leg off, those broken bones are going to put so much fat into his blood that he could have a heart attack and die. And these other guys go, well, he could do, but he's in great shape. And if you cut both his legs off, you're going to kill him anyway. Yeah.
So mountaineering is at a risk right now.
Yeah. So anyway, so I woke up in the recovery room, and I met a nurse some 6 years later, and she said, "You don't remember me, but I was the nurse in attendance. I was in the recovery room. You looked down the bed as soon as you were done, and you saw that you still had one of your feet. Mm-hmm. And you said, thank God.
Wow.
I was expecting whoever was there to just freak out because that had happened. And here you are, and you're seeing this blue-black deal with toes sticking out like a bad hair day, and you're saying, thank God. Right. And it's like, I knew in my brain that if I had one of my feet, I had a chance.
Yeah. So that's a really important, point, Tom, because what I'm hearing from you is that this tragedy happened, and you accepted that it happened. And I often tell people that there's a big difference between acceptance and resignation, right? So you accepted that this thing happened. There's nothing you could do about it, but you weren't resigned to the fate that you're going to be just an amputee with no future, right? That you could always do other things outside of, rather than sit there and mope.
Correct.
Of having only one leg, and you go, oh, thank God, it could have been worse. I could have had no leg. So really important point, I think, that to point out to our listeners, to our viewers, that, hey, sometimes some really bad things happen to you, but there's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah, and there's some things you can't change. They're going to happen, and they're waiting for us. Life is a proving ground, and we get a lot of. I'm kind of struggling for the word right now, but a lot of grief, you overcome lots of hurdles in your life. And my feeling is that every time you overcome adversity, it cuts a new facet, a new face on the rough diamonds that we all are. And after we've got multiple facets and we're really polished, people can hardly buy us because we're so valuable. Yeah. And so in retrospect, I have never had a really bad thing happen to me that I haven't been glad about in the long run.
Yes.
Now, I have never survived one of my children or something like that. I've never had a child die or something that I think maybe I'd have to change my mind. All the stuff that's happened to me has happened to me, and after a while, I get over the self-pity and saying, why me?
Right.
And I get into a mindset where I go, why was I chosen? What can I do with this that is going to help me make a difference?
Gotcha. So it comes down to, it's really not what happens to you, but how you respond to what happens to you that in the end matters. So here it is now that you are a mountaineer with only one leg, and you're climbing, what is regarded as the toughest climb in your field. What were your friends thinking when you said to them, hey, this is what I want to do?
Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to let them know that, I'm a Welshman, and on the evolutionary totem pole, we're, somewhere between a flounder and a codfish. We're low on the totem pole. And so I was just going to say, okay, well, this is just a fin off, I can get around fine with one fin. And I need to rediscover who Tom Whittaker is and what I can do. And what they haven't done is, my spirit is fine, my body is broken. And I'm going to do this climb within 2 years. And like I said, their reaction was, this is worse than ever because the guy's delusional.
Right.
And so within 2 years, I find myself standing at the base of the climb in Yosemite Valley, and I'm flaking out the rope, making a big pile of like spaghetti of the rope, and I'm tying it into my harness. And my harness and my fingers are like sausages. They're not working right.
Mm-hmm.
It's rather like people that have been playing snowballs and stuff out in the cold, and their hands, they can't feel them. They can't do fine motor skills anymore. And it was like that. And I realized my fingers weren't cold. I was terrified. And climbers are used to dealing with fear. And what we do is we take fear and we shrink it down till it's the size of a walnut, and it's kind of floating around somewhere inside you. And that keeps you honest. That stops you making mistakes and being arrogant and putting yourself and other people's lives at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it keeps you honest. But this thing, from being a walnut, had grown into a tree that was paralyzing my limbs. I had lost it. And I realized that it wasn't just the anxiety of taking on the challenge of the climb, that this now meant that all the messages that I'd been getting, that you're less than, you're a cripple, you're a this, that, and the other, that I was always fighting against that and not letting me put me in the disability box, because we all want to categorize people.
Yes.
And so what I wanted to do is find out who Tom Whittaker was, and if I fail at my task of climbing outer limits, I'm going to prove that they're right. And it's like I was betting the farm on this climb, and when it was put up, it was the hardest climb in the world. And here I am, and maybe this is a little arrogant, a little too much. I've got an artificial leg now, and I've got to do this down climb. Mm-hmm. And I started up the climb, and as I was climbing up this crack, putting my hands in, doing this stuff, I got to a place where the crack pinched out. And I have to get to a layback where you're hanging on it's like hanging on a door, you're holding there and your feet are against this wall and you're moving up, and you're just using the pulling of your arms and the pressure of your feet to keep you on the rock, or you disappear. Mm-hmm. And all the time you can feel the energy just draining out of you, and you have to go, and then finally get that, thank God, jam at the top, pull yourself up until you can just stand in close to the rock. And now I had another 70 feet of overhanging rock and crack above me. And I just wait there until I get the lactic acid out of my arms again, and I can go again. Mm-hmm. And now I've got something that's just like the most amazing, elated feeling in my life. The climbing above there is great. It's within my ability. I'm just cruising up this climb. I get to this tiny little ledge that's it's about the same size as this business envelope, and you're standing on this. You're standing on this wall, and the rope that you have attached to your back, so that you can put you can set up your rappel to come back down, it is falling. By the time you've got up to this little ledge, it's coming out. It's 12 feet out from the foot of the climb, because the climb's so steep and overhanging. Right. That now, and little faces like postage stamps looking up at you, and I'm tied off on this little ledge, and they're shouting up at me going, "Whittaker, let's get going. What's going on?" They want to do the climb too. Yeah. These guys have got all their fingers and toes, and I'm there, and I've got there. I'm just flooded with just emotion, and then it's like I've got this. It's like I'm looking into a pool, and there's this fish, this terrible fish that's coming up to the surface of the pool, and I want to commune with it. I want to look at this fish. I want to look it in the eye. I want to know what wisdom, what thing it's got to say to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the realization that I got from that was that I was never, ever, ever going to let anybody say what my capabilities were. I have enough insecurities to overcome myself. I don't need to take on other people's concepts of what disabled people should be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to forge my own way, and so it was just a feeling of defiance that overcame me. And when I rappelled back down to my friends and started later on that evening driving back up to Pocatello, Idaho, where I was living and had done my rehabilitation,
Mm-hmm.
the community had rallied round and had provided me with funds so that I could buy a prosthetic and stuff like that. They were incredible, and I wanted to pay back the people of Pocatello.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, now this has given me permission to do something which is a totally weird idea, and that is using outdoor adventure recreation, a small group of people, small group process, doing adventures in the wild outdoors to build self-esteem, esprit de corps. It's like, okay, we call ourselves a handicap outdoor group.
Ah, nice.
So that's
before we get into that, Tom. So I mean, I think your story, prove something that I've always known, that when you go after big goals, you have to be delusional. And I often describe myself as such. I know I probably sound delusional, but you have to be really at the point of being delusional to be able to go do this thing that there's nothing in your background that would even suggest that it's remotely possible, but then you have to go. And then you get to that point, like, D-Day, that point where you're supposed to launch. And as you say, your fingers become sausages, right?
Yeah.
It's so great. And most people don't recognize that, great accomplishments are always accompanied by great fear. And the people who actually succeed are the ones who find a way to control that fear and to move ahead, regardless, despite the fear. Courage is being scared to death, but doing it anyway. And then here it is that, you talk about how you are making good progress, but then you get to this one point, and I think we all have that in our lives and in our experiences. And when you watch the movies, you see that where the hero or the heroine is making great progress, and then there comes a great adversity that led that you kind of have to, dig deeper to get over to finally get to the top, right?
Yeah.
And the story that you just told me, and I'm like riveted, just so fascinated by it, I think demonstrates that well. And this is not just a story about rock climbing. It's a story about climbing in our lives, right? Getting past the unsavory things that may have happened, and then, having friends looking at us and going, wow, not only is your body broken, your mind is broken. But then going past the realities of your challenges and what all the things that people are saying that you can or cannot do, and recognizing that there's so much more in you that you can do. So I'm proud of you. And I thank you for that example.
Well, I love the fact that you said that courage is not being not afraid. It's being in mortal fear, but facing your fears and pushing through to, and that's what courage is. It's definitely, if you're not frightened, you can't be courageous.
It's not possible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's because of that experience, right? My tagline is keep on pushing.
Yeah.
Now that pushes you to being able to go do adventure training and with other disabled people who probably have certain self-esteem issues because of their conditions, correct?
Yes, yes. And the thing is, I had no funds. I'm almost a homeless person. Mm-hmm. I have no qualifications for working with people with disabilities. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a school teacher and all the other things. But my feeling is that the small group can be like a mirror to people, and the activity that you're doing unpeels the onion so that you're basically, instead of standing naked in front of your peers, your people who can see exactly who you are. And you may be able to look at in the mirror and see, oh, I'm an eagle, and they're looking at you and they're going, that guy's a sparrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can fool ourselves, but we can't fool these people. And then they're our mirror. And so they will feed us back information that we can use to make changes in our life, because we now recognize that there's some stumbling blocks, there's some things that are holding us back. Mm-hmm. That once we identify, if we have the courage to face them, we can get those smoothed out and we can have a more successful and better life as a result.
Yeah. But, and you made a really good point. So here it is that you want to start this program. You have no funds. You're practically homeless. You have no formal training, no expertise, but you get it started anyway and made an impact and a difference in the lives of people. And it's one of the things I try to impress upon on people that I meet as well. And when I do my talks, that you will never have a perfect time to go pursue your goals. There are always going to be things that are missing. There are always going to be this thing that you didn't know, or the resources that you didn't have. But if you sit back waiting, then you'll be waiting in vain. You'll be waiting forever. But if you decide, even if in your mind you're an eagle and what people are seeing is a sparrow, if you step out, and you'll become smarter, you'll become wiser. You'll start getting the resources and the support that you need to transform this eagle, this sparrow, into
exactly. And the great thing about goals, about challenges, about dreams is that they're sequential. And I had to do outer limits before I could be inspired to take on creating the CW Hog program, the Cooperative Wilderness Handicap Outdoor Group. Right. We put that together. Now that was 30 years ago, and people still haven't reached the same standard that we were doing back then, today. And the reason for that is that instead of asking able-bodied people what was going to be best for us, I went to my peers, other disabled people, and said, hey, what would you gladly break a leg being world-class at?
Yeah.
I know what you'd break a leg being world-class at.
And that's that vision, that great vision that pulls us right out of, our normal environment and circumstances to be better than how others may see us, or how we may even be seeing ourselves in this moment. So you go from that.
Can I make another point? Just to jump in here, because I'm thinking about you and your journey, and I remember you telling me that as a teenager you didn't have shoes. And what I want to know is, how old were you when you became accepted into Sandhurst, which is Britain's elite officer training for the armed services? Mm-hmm. How old were you when you were accepted?
I started at Sandhurst Whoa, just after my 20th birthday.
So at like 15 or 16, you didn't have shoes on your feet.
This is true. So, you know, 14, 15, I'm running track barefooted. Yes, that's.
Yeah.
I saved up and I bought, you know, what was what was kind of like Converse those days.
Yeah.
Which was like the lowest thing on the market, but that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
And yeah, until, well, here we are having this conversation. So you're absolutely right. You have to have that vision, man, of something greater, because that's the thing that pulls you, right? And
it's this sequential thing. You had successes in athletics and sprinting and running and as an athlete, and then that gave you an idea of, okay, well, I can join the military, and now that you can be an officer in the militry,
that's
and
a really important
training, you know.
Important point. You're right. It's all sequential, which you know, really speaks to my, you know, philosophy of keep on pushing, because you work from where you are to get to a level that's above where you currently are, and then you can see something else, right? And I tell people all the time, go as far as you can see, for when you get there, you'll see further. And
yes,
you know, my foray onto the bobsled team absolutely grew from being a barefooted boy, running track, to going to Sandhurst, coming back and dreaming about the Olympics, or reviving that dream. And
yes.
And so I don't know that if I was not in the Army at the time, the bobsled opportunity would have turned up in my life.
Yes.
Most of the people who the top 7 of the top 10 who were initially selected were all members of the Jamaica Defense Force.
Yeah.
Right. And I was among the top 4, fortunately. So you're right. It's all sequential. So you go from, you know, volunteering with your friend to getting your butt kicked by some woman, to going, no, this can't be. I have to learn how to do this, to learning how to mountain climb, you know, hitting, you know, almost rock bottom, certainly in terms of the experience of losing a leg, to climbing this steep face, to climbing Mount Everest. So
yeah.
how did that happen? Talk about success being sequential.
Well, you were talking about delusional, and we have to have a little of that, a pinch of that, you know. It's like the fairy dust, you know, it frees us from and lets us imagine doing something that is outstanding. And that was the process in the hogs that I was trying to do. And it's what I call the creative process. We are the only creature on this planet that has an imagination and can have a vision of the future with them in it. Mm-hmm. And then work towards making that vision come true. And we have to reverse engineer out of the picture that we imagine of ourselves back to where we are. And then we kind of do one step at a time until we get into the vision.
Indeed, agreed.
And so that is the creative process. My idea with the hogs was, if we can do that with recreation, with fun activities, and we learn how to do the process when we're playing, when we're.
You said hogs. Is that an?
Yeah, the handicap outdoor group, okay. Cooperative Wilderness Handicap Outdoor Group, CW Hog, or just the hogs as we call ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, and so it was all about, if you can learn how to. I was amazed, because so many of these people were so shut down that they didn't have imaginations. They didn't believe that the American dream was for them.
Right.
It was for other people.
They were looking at their current circumstances and listening to what everybody else had to say about that. And that became their main focus, right? And in a way, their glass ceiling and self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And so anyway, as far as your question about Everest, some of it was really pragmatic. I had a prosthetic foot that was made out of beech wood, which is a hard, heavy wood. And it had a spring toe and a bit of soft rubber for the heel. And the piece that I stuffed my stump into was, the whole thing weighed 14 pounds. I'd lost like 3.5 pounds of tissue, and they replace it from an internal skeleton to an external skeleton that weighs 14 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, it's like giving me a ship's anchor and saying, okay, well, you know, have a great life, guy.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm seeing these guys with this thing called a flex foot. And I'm going, okay, well, if I'm going to be able to climb Mount Everest, I can't do it with this. I need to have something that is better than this. So I went and talked to...
How did the idea to climb Mount Everest come about in the first place? How did you jump from hogs to Everest?
Well, I was a hog myself, you know. It wasn't us and them. It was,
right.
We were hogs. And so as a hog, it was my duty to have a vision and work into it. And all the time as a disabled person, I had to go, okay, well, what are you capable of now? And I found that through training and focus, I was capable of climbing things as rock climbs, as hard as I climbed when I was at my peak fitness and had all my fingers and toes. And then I was climbing very big climbs in the Canadian Rockies in wintertime, frozen waterfalls that were more than 1,000 feet high. And all the time I was doing this to just find out, okay, well, you've already put up the first ascent of this waterfall that's become a classic climb in the Canadian Rockies. And now, you know, can you still climb at that standard? And so I would work myself up until I could go to the Rockies, in the Canadian Rockies in wintertime, and spend a couple of weeks climbing and just, you know, see what I could do. Well, I did the same with whitewater kayaking and things like that. I could get my crutches in the back of the boat, and I got respite from my disability immediately, because everybody's sitting down when you're kayaking, and this is great, you know. I'm zooming around, I'm doing it, and you know, it's just, I'm just one of the, you know, one of the crew. It's just, and so that was what I was doing. So now there's a gal who works for Snowbird Ski Corporation in Salt Lake City. That's like, that's about a 2-hour drive from where I lived. And she's got these people that she's recruited to do an Everest expedition that she's putting together. And she's going, okay, well, do you know anybody else that might be a good candidate for this? And they go, well, we've got a kind of off the wall idea. We've got this disabled guy up in Pocatello, Idaho. And so, you know, they would have never mentioned me if I wasn't doing extreme stuff with my foot. So then I'm in the CW Hog office, and the phone rings, and it's just like somebody's sucked all of the oxygen out of the room. It's like their voice is now 1,000 miles away, and they're saying, I'm not offering you a place on the team. I'm trying to find out if you would be interested in joining our team to climb Mount Everest. And that's a dream that I didn't dare dream. But like you were saying, that because you were in the armed forces, you got the chance to be on the Jamaica bobsled team. And just as an aside, it amazed me that we go to Kyrgyzstan and immediately you're the damn star because everybody's
smile, man. It's
your movie, Cool Runnings. And, you know, and I can't believe it. These guys in Kyrgyzstan have seen Cool Runnings, and they think it's so, you're their hero.
Yeah.
I mean, amazingly, you know, so there I am, you know, carrying your bag going, I didn't know I signed up for this. But anyway, it was just amazing. But we get opportunities to do extraordinary things, extraordinary, to be extraordinary. And this is such a gift. But if we didn't have the adversity and we didn't accept that life is a proving ground, and we didn't solve problems and get better and better at solving problems so that we could solve bigger and bigger problems, then people start to value you.
Yes.
I got a call when I was part of the Hogs, not just from this gal down and the opportunity to go to Everest for the first time, but I also got a call from Ted Kennedy, who wanted me to come over and talk to a subcommittee on disability about what I was doing with the CW Hog program.
And you said Ted Kennedy, as in Senator Ted Kennedy?
Yes, Senator Ted Kennedy. Yeah. And so there I am, you know, showing these guys an interactive slideshow and telling, and you know, and they're seeing stuff that they wouldn't dare to do. And all of a sudden, these guys are being inspired by these images of people with disabilities doing stuff that they wouldn't themselves feel comfortable attempting.
Awesome. So you get the call, and you obviously went on the first expedition. When was this?
That was in 1989. And then I got up to 24,000 feet on a 29,000 foot mountain.
Yeah.
And then this storm came in that put 10 feet of snow on the mountain. We were cut off from all communications. We couldn't we were getting information in, but we couldn't get information out. There were 5 Sherpa and 2 climbing members, myself and Andy Lapkus, and they were convinced that after 6 days of storm and so on, that we were dead. We were listening to other people that had died because big avalanches came down and hit their camp and stuff like that. We couldn't get out to render help because they were in other parts of the mountain, and there was so much snow that you weren't walking through the snow, you were swimming through it. And so after 6 days, the snow, the wind and the snow abated, and we spent 16 hours covering terrain that a mountaineer in good condition could probably do in 3. And
was that going up the hill, continuing to
coming back down, going back down to base camp? Yeah.
So you're stuck in a base camp for 6 days, 10.
No, this was up on the mountain. We were up high. Yeah.
You're stuck in a camp up on the mountain.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Up at about 21,000 feet. Yeah.
And so you're stuck there. All the snow is falling. You're hearing reports of other people, you know, getting killed, avalanches, and so on. What is the mindset like? What's the mood like among the 7 of you guys that are there?
Well, you don't have really any option, and you know that if somebody weakens, they will be left, because it's too difficult it's all we can do to save ourselves. We can't take on anybody else, or else the entire team will die.
Right.
So if somebody weakens and they can't keep up. So I've got an artificial foot, and because my artificial foot is smaller than, you know, a regular foot with a mountaineering boot on it and stuff like that, that when I stand on the snow in somebody else's footprint, it just, what called post holing, you go all the way down to your knee, and then you have to pull it out, and then you do it again and again. And they're walking on the top of the snow, and here you are with a considerably reduced strength of your right leg and a heavy prosthetic, and you're post holing down through the snow every step. And it was like I had to keep up or I would be left. And that was never, it was never spoken.
Right.
But
it's an unwritten rule, and it was understood.
You know that that's the situation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So, you know, as a mountaineer, you know, you climb, and someone who's climbed Everest, and you hear of other people getting killed, and that was happening while you were on the mountain. How do you guys view that? And I know in bobsledding, you know, the year I learned to drive sleds, 2 people were killed in Eastern Europe, and and it's kind of like the same thing in the army as well. You know, we all know all going to war. We all know everyone is not coming back, but you kind of think it's not you.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that kind of how you guys view this when you're climbing as well?
Well, there's some situations where failure is not an option. Yeah, because failure is not a question of losing some money for your business or losing your job or whatever. It's you're going to lose your life. And so I think people need to understand, like courage, that there's a difference between failure and making mistakes. If you are in uncharted territory, you are going to make mistakes. The way I could fail with the hogs is to be put off by the mistakes that I was making, not learning from them, remaking mistakes, making careless, stupid mistakes that I shouldn't be making, and damaging other people's lives, having people die or get injured, and so on. So but the failure would be for me to give up on them.
Right.
And I was going to do the hogs for a year. And after a year, I realized that this organization wasn't ready to be left because it would just fold. And I had to put it on a secure footing. It took me 9 years to do that. So, but failure would have been to turn my back on it and go, okay, well, it's time for me to do my thing now. No, I had a responsibility to these people that showed up and who believed in me. And so that whole thing was a 9-year commitment. And so anyway, so there's a difference between making mistakes. And if somebody that I recruit to work for me will say, as an expedition member, continually makes the same mistakes, I'm going to tell them that they can no longer go up on the mountain because they're endangering themselves, they're endangering other people, and they're not learning.
Right.
And then I talk to the liaison officer, who is an army officer, and making sure that you obey all the rules and stuff like that. And you just say, well, you know, Jack Owens is no longer part of the mountaineering team. He can stay in base camp as long as he wants. And he's welcome to join another team, but he's not going up on the mountain with us.
Yeah. So that was your first climb. Tell me about the second expedition.
Well, the second expedition, I went up with a preeminent Australian mountaineer, a guy who had climbed the nose of El Capitan, which is when you go into Yosemite Valley, it is the biggest face in front of you. And
Right.
we spent multiple days on that together. We'd done a lot of climbing before I became disabled, and we both arrived in Yosemite Valley following our dream to become name brand climbers. He had achieved this, written lots of books, was on the North Face climbing team. He was a professional mountaineer. He was just, he was a big shot. Yeah. And I was at an outdoor retailer trade show, and we were having a beer together, and I said, look, I've got a proposition to make for you. I would like for the two of us to join forces and to climb Mount Everest. And this would be a great story. We both went to Everest. Both went to Yosemite Valley. We became extreme climbers and mountaineers. The world was our oyster. I get hit by a drunk driver, and you go on to achieve your aim, and then you come back, kind of circle back. And my goal is to be the first disabled person to climb Mount Everest, and you come to help me do that. And so he wasn't at all convinced. And so, you know, I bought him another beer and another beer, and then I realized that he's an Australian and he was never going to be convinced until my money ran out. And then he's going, okay, yeah, well, great idea, I'll be there. So anyway, he milked that for as much as he could. Yeah. And then we headed out there in 1995, but we had a guy who was going to make a documentary film of it, and he'd already made a film on the other side of Everest, and he said he wasn't going back to that side, and he wanted to do it on the north side, and if we didn't go to the north side, there was no movie.
Right.
So what we had promised people that were funding our expedition was that their products would be showing up in a documentary. And so we had to go over to the North Face. Well, the North Face climbs are the hardest climbs.
Yeah.
And that's why North Face is called North Face. You know, they're because they're the extreme guys, you know, and the North Faces are always the extreme climbs. Mm-hmm. And I got up there within 1,000 feet of the summit, and the route wasn't properly prepared. I didn't have people to carry my extra oxygen cylinders. Mm-hmm. So I was carrying 3 oxygen cylinders. There was no oxygen for me at 24,000 feet. I went to 27,000 feet without oxygen, and on and on. And there were just a lot of things that compounded one another. And I saw that the writing was on the wall, and I had to give up my attempt, because if I didn't, then I would be taking away the opportunity for Greg Child to get to the summit. I knew I could get to the summit. I just didn't know if I could get home.
Got you. So, yeah, so it's one of those things where you had to make that decision. It's really the life or death of the expedition in terms of everybody getting up to the summit, and also your physical life or death as well.
Yeah. And it's the thing about mountaineering is we always think that the summit is the end. You know, it's like running your race. You break the ribbon with your chest and the race is over. Well, on the summit of Mount Everest, it's a bit like you just didn't only climb the pine tree, but then you realize that there's a branch sticking out and it's higher than the top of the pine tree. So you have to climb down and climb up to the top of the branch to get there. Mm-hmm. And then you have to come back and climb all the way back down to base camp.
Right.
Before
you had a successful ascent.
And the most fashionable way to die on Mount Everest is returning from either a summit attempt or a failed summit attempt. Mm-hmm. Because you've given so much getting there that you don't have enough juice to get home.
So that you fall short on both attempts, and now your friend is saying, hey, I remember reading and you telling me that he brought back a pebble, a little rock, and said, I took this from Everest and you need to replace it.
Yeah, exactly that. He got to the top. I was disappointed, obviously, and I was in my tent, and this guy puts his head through and said, come on in, Greg. And we're down at 17,000 feet at base camp, and we chit chat, and then he says, you know, Whittaker, I picked this rock up on the summit of Mount Everest. And he holds it out to me. I hold my hand up, and he drops this little piece of shard of rock in my hand. And he says, yeah, I want you to put that back where I got it from. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he threw down the gauntlet. I wasn't sure that I wanted to close my hand on the rock. And that night...
Things that movies are made of. That, I could see that in a movie. I see that.
I actually...
Challenge, boy.
Actually, we have the film of me putting that rock back on the summit of Mount Everest.
I have seen that.
Film.
Who thought it? Greg, do you remember in 1995 getting me some rock from the summit and giving it to me? I'm saying, I want you to put this back where I got it from. Well, Greg, this is you. We took care of business.
I really like this kind of pay it forward kind of philosophy. And Greg gave me that challenge. And when I'm talking to groups, if the people that have hired me to talk to their people want me to do it, I challenge them to do something that they have been making excuses not to do because it is not convenient, like you were saying earlier on, mm-hmm. and to do it. And I will give them a piece of rock, not from Mount Everest, but right. that I've gone out and collected myself. I bought it in a store or something. You know, I made the effort to get it, mm-hmm. and it's in this bag. And they reach in. I say, no, you don't choose the piece of stone you get. The piece of stone chooses you, and you pull it out. And they say, now that is a unique piece of stone. There's not another one exactly the same in the entire universe.
Yeah.
And you're unique too. Use the, and if you want to put the stone whenever you've achieved your deal, that's fine. Otherwise, I want this piece of rock on your workstation, in your pocket, by your mirror when you shave in the morning, whatever. But I want that to keep reminding you that you have this abstract thing that you have to turn into a piece of concrete.
Yeah.
And
you made a point which is absolutely true. I think one of the things that keep us back from becoming all that we can possibly become is because doing that is inconvenient. And people are not always willing to go through the inconvenience, right? To put that piece of rock back where it belongs. So
yep.
I think that's a great example, a great exercise that you share with your people as well. So kudos on that. So talking about or touching on speaking to groups. I know you're a motivational speaker these days as well. Another life. And you speak about leadership. Peter Drucker, the great management guru, he says, only three things happen naturally in an organization: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. How would you define leadership, Tom?
Well, let me ask you a question. In your family, who is the authoritarian? Is it you or your wife? Who's tougher?
Whoa. I think it depends on what it is that we're doing. Generally me, except when it comes to my daughters.
Yes.
And then they have me wrapped around their fingers, and she's kind of the one who's a little bit tougher.
Yeah. So there you go. So you're the enforcer. You're the hammer.
Yeah.
But maybe your wife is the person that does the managing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the difference between managing and leading. They're the people that are making sure that their rules. So you have an environment in your house that is different from the environment in my house.
Right.
And your children have to understand what is acceptable behavior and what is not. And the more they respect you, the more they want to keep the rules, because they don't want to disappoint you.
Right.
And if they don't respect you, and it's my way or the highway, and you're a total, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it's just no give, and you're just so tough and not compassionate and so on, that then people are trying to avoid you. They're trying to get around you. They don't care if they break rules, as long as you don't catch them breaking rules.
Right.
And so, my girls say to me now, I'm an empty nester. They say, Dad, I know I make bad choices and bad decisions, but I know I'm making those bad choices and bad decisions.
Right.
And I always feel ashamed, because I know that you'd be ashamed of me if you knew what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're policing themselves. And that is leadership. That is and we always think that a leader has to be this kind of person, but they don't at all. What they have to do is create the environment where the people that are on their team have to feel needed.
Right.
And they, as individuals, and you have to, as a leader, help them to understand what their unique promise of value is, what they bring to the table, and what is different about them from other people. And then you have to, once you've done that, you can then, as a group of people, give them the opportunity to say what their unique promise of value is and how they're going to use that to the benefit of their team. And we all think that competition is the essence of what we need to do.
Yeah.
It's not. I never was trying to be better than anybody else on Everest. When I was on Everest, what I was trying to do was make sure that the people on my team fulfilled their hopes and dreams and desires.
So what I'm hearing from you, I actually think I heard two things. One is, as a leader, you are, as I said, working to help people fulfill their promise, right? You are showing compassion. You're, coaching and guiding so they can become the best they can be. You yourself were not trying to be the best. Your daughters, recognize when they're making mistakes. And, so what I'm hearing there also is what I call personal leadership or self-leadership.
Yes.
So as individuals who may have a leadership title, who is responsible for a team, I see, self-leadership as perhaps the most important responsibility, personal leadership, because you can give to your team what you are not yourself.
Yes. And my job as a leader is to make sure that I have the right people in the right places. I also have a responsibility of telling them what the vision is.
Right.
And let them within their project teams do something that we call in outdoors is situational leadership. So there'll be people that are really good at one aspect, but not so good at another. Maybe somebody has become injured and has a bad break of a leg or something. Well, I'm the leader of the expedition, but I've got a guy here who's a paramedic.
Right.
So why would I be doing, telling people what to do? Exactly. I give him, he becomes the leader, and I ask him what he needs. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I serve him. And, there's a Bob Dylan song saying everybody needs to serve somebody,
Yeah.
But you grow and you learn, and that creates trust. And if you don't have trust, the other thing about leadership is that you have to be really proud of your people, and you have to give them, we'll say, a task that is worthy of their time and their talents. Mm-hmm. Over and above making money, they have to be able to go, okay, this is what it's all about.
This is worth it. It's a purpose. It's a higher purpose. And you're absolutely right, because I think we often get confused when we think about leadership and people who are in positions of leadership, where we get confused with this business of motivating or inspiring. I think you and I had this conversation before, where we think the best thing to do is to find people who are already motivated, and then hire them with something you spoke about before, a vision. And so when you sell them on the vision, when you sell them on you as someone who is capable, because you're practicing a very high level of personal leadership, and then you put them in a place to succeed because you understand what their strengths and their talents are. You're on the mountain, and you need a guy who's a medic. So he's a guy who is going to be attending to the injured person, and you're serving him now.
Yeah.
As the leader. Going back to my Sandhurst days, where our motto is serve to lead, right? And I still so believe in that. That's just ingrained in me. And so that makes for an effective team. That makes for teammates, employees, colleagues, or whichever term you want to use, who feel that they are valuable, as you just mentioned, right? Because they are working on something that, it's not just the money. It's not that money isn't important, but most people make the mistake, I believe, in thinking that money is a great motivator. And I think it's zero sum. Yes, it's important if it doesn't exist, if there's not enough of it. But if there's enough, then what people are looking for is the value and the purpose in what they're doing.
One of the truisms is that the way that we motivate our people is it shapes them. An example of this is that people that are growing tomatoes down in Florida, you get a tomato and it tastes like the cardboard box that it came up in. Mm-hmm. Why is that? And the reason is that we reward farmers for the shape, the color, the size of the product, but not the flavor of the product.
Taste, yeah.
And so we have beautiful looking produce that tastes like the cardboard box that they came up from Florida in.
Yeah.
We get from people what we reward, because that is, they see this is what's important. Now, my 6-year-old daughter trekked into Everest Base Camp, and she did something at 6, which 50% of people that try trekking into Everest Base Camp don't succeed in doing. Why did she do that? Because it was expected. Nobody goes, ooh, this is going to be really hard. It's just, we're just going for a walk. Yeah. And that's what we did. And she was running around in base camp like a crazy person. Nobody had told her she's supposed to be out of breath, so she wasn't.
Right.
You know, we hear a lot about traumatic, what's that?
PTSD.
PTSD.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. There you go. And but are we setting people up for failure? Are we saying, okay, you should be feeling like this, you're going to be feeling like this? What people start to recognize is those feelings, and they grip onto them. There's something also called post-traumatic growth, where after you have something that's really traumatic, you use that to move beyond where you are.
Yeah.
And every really serious thing you take on your life, not only has an outer journey, but also takes you on an inner journey. And it's the inner journey and the strength that you have and your willpower that enables you to overcome a better goal, a better dream. And that's why they're sequential, because when we get to Everest Base Camp, nobody is capable of climbing Everest. While we're on the mountain educates us, the mountain gets us fit, and we get the esprit de corps and the companionship and the working together and the belief that as a team, we can do this. As an individual, we'd never even get through the ice fall, never mind to the summit of the mountain.
Yes. No, it's been, you know, you have lived a remarkable life, Tom, and this has been a remarkable, you know, few minutes hanging and chatting with you, picking your brains and learning about your experiences. You're absolutely right. You know, when things happen to us, when we experience adversity, and I've never heard the term before, and I love it, post-traumatic growth. And I think your life demonstrates that. You know, you had a traumatic experience, and you know, you accepted that it has happened. You never resigned yourself to a life that was not going to be fulfilling, but rather you chose to grow out of that experience. And in the process, you have helped others to grow. You have done, you know, I was about to say, you've done things that many others haven't done yet. You're the first disabled person to climb Mount Everest, but you have done, as a person who has climbed Mount Everest, something that the vast majority of people on planet Earth have not done and will not do. And that just demonstrates, again, the tremendous ability of the human spirit. I think you epitomize that. You know, you epitomize the whole business of having a vision and what can happen when you get that firm in your mind and you train your mind, you condition your mind to go get it done, right? And so much, you know, much respect, much love to you and for all that you have done. I know, so as a speaker, we want, and you're actively speaking, I know you're in the process of relaunching your website. Please, you know, share with our audience where people can find you to be able to benefit from your kernels of wisdom and to make sure that they're able to get their rock. They can throw away once they accomplish their goals.
I don't have it up while we're talking here now. I'm hoping that in the next 10 days, 2 weeks, it'll be up and running. and it's tomwhittaker.com, and that's Whittaker with 2 T's, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I should come up pretty easily. I'm, when you do a search, it usually pops up.
Yeah, so absolutely, people can Google Tom Whittaker to learn more about your amazing story. But certainly, Tom Whittaker with 2 T's.com. You'll be able to find the man, the legend. Invite you to your events, man, to your meetings, to be able to get up close and personal with him. He's a personable, very loud Irishman, Welshman. Ooh. Loud Welshman.
Well, Irishmen are just Welshmen with their brains kicked out.
That's what it is, right? So you see, not very far off. But it'll be awesome. Tom, thank you so much for appearing on Keep On Pushing.
Devon, well, you know that I'm your biggest fan, and thank you for having me on your show. I really love it, and I could look at that grin all day.
Thank you. Well, as long as we're staying away from ski slopes, I think we'll be fine.
All right, you bad boy. Take it easy.